So once we've assembled the left and right sidebars, we're going to start working on the ear pucks. So you'll notice that one ear puck has a bunch of silk screen stuff on it, along with a control chip, and the other ear puck doesn't have much of anything except LEDs. This is because this contains the chip that drives these ear pucks along with these sidebars. So if you don't have a helmet that supports ear pucks, you still need to solder up this ear puck, and you could just set this one aside. So that's because this drives these two boards, and without this chip, these two boards don't function. So I'll show how to what components you need to mount on here in order to get these to work, and then I'll show how to mount the LEDs here and how to connect it to the ear puck. So we're going to start with the 16 megahertz crystal, and we're going to mount it right here. And then we're going to bend the leads out of the way, and then we're going to mount the 22 picofarad capacitors, and they go right here and right here. And now we're going to solder this 16 megahertz crystal and these two capacitors into place. Once soldered, we're going to go ahead and trim the leads. And now we're going to mount the 0.1 microfarad and the 22 microfarad capacitor. So we're going to start with the electrolytic 22 microfarad capacitor, and it doesn't really matter what one you choose, but you notice that there's a plus, a minus, and a plus. So make sure you line up the positive lead of the electrolytic with one of the pluses and the negative lead with one of the minuses. So I'm just going to pick this one. So put it on this side, bend it out of the way, and then we're going to mount the 0.1 microfarad. So this one is not polarized, so it doesn't matter what way it goes, so we're just going to mount it like so. And we're going to go ahead and solder these into place. So that's all the electronics soldered to the board if you just want to use these sidebars and just not have the ear puck LEDs do anything. You don't even have to solder any LEDs if you just want to use these. So I'm going to go ahead and just show how to mount these LEDs, and for those of you that just want the sidebars, just ignore this part. So you will need your assortment of LEDs at this point. So I have a green, a yellow, an orange, a UV, a blue, and a red. So it's 6 colors, and we're going to mount one of each colors here. It doesn't matter the order, I just chose this order randomly, and I'm going to take a red LED, and I'm going to place it at the top here. So again, remember, plus and minus, match those up, and then just bend the LED out this way. So that's a red, and then I'm going to go ahead and mount an orange here. And again, you probably can't see it in this one, but there's a flat side here. So the short lead goes on the flat side again. Okay, so that's the orange. Then I'm going to mount a yellow here. I'm going to go ahead and mount a green. Then I'm going to mount a blue. And then I'm going to take the last and final LED, which are UV here, and mount it here. So all these LEDs are mounted, and we're going to go ahead and solder these into place. And then we're going to go ahead and bend these leads, and we're going to trim all these leads off. So all these LEDs have been mounted, and then we're going to go ahead and move on to mounting the resistors. So we're going to take our 470 ohm resistors, and we're going to mount 6 of them into the board here. So again, just make them into U shape and just place them where all the resistors go. You can use 470 ohm resistors for all these LEDs, and they should be the proper value. You could go down to about 330 ohms and all the way up to 1K, and these LEDs still should work. So all these resistors are mounted. We're going to go ahead and solder all 6 of these resistors into place. So all the resistors have been soldered, and we're going to go ahead and trim all these leads off. We're done with this ear puck, and we're going to set this one aside. And then we're going to start with this one. Again, just follow the order that you followed here. Just mount the LEDs, mount the resistors, and that's pretty much it. So again, I'm going to mount a red LED at the very top. And then I'm going to mount an orange LED. And then I'm going to mount a yellow LED. And then I'm going to mount a green. Then a blue. Then an ultraviolet. And then I'm going to go ahead and solder these LEDs into place, mount the resistors, and solder the resistors into place. So now the ear pucks are done. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tin these pads here on this ear puck and on this ear puck. So now we're going to go ahead and connect this board to this board. So if you haven't already guessed that, we're going to connect it here and here. So if you look at the silk screen, you could see a tiny little 7 there. It's a little cut off, but there's a 7 there, and there's a 1 here. So what you want to do is connect the 7 to the 7, and connect all these all the way down to 1 to 1. So in order to do this, you'll need your flat ribbon cable, and you'll need to break off 7 conductors, and you want that piece of cable to be about 2 feet long. So we've got our cable, it's around 2 feet long. What we need to do is strip all the insulation off of this, and then we need to solder one side here and the other side here. So let me just strip off all this insulation. So I've went ahead and stripped about a quarter to an eighth of an inch of the insulation off, and we're going to go ahead and solder one side to the main ear piece, so the one with all the components. So in order to solder this cable, what you need to do is just take your wire here, and then take your soldering iron, and just basically touch the little lump of solder with your soldering iron, and the wire should be properly soldered on. So just like that, we have one wire soldered, and now we need to solder the rest of them. So this cable is soldered on, and we're going to go ahead and connect it to this board here. So just trace the wire all the way to the end. So this is the number 1 contact from here, and I'm going to go ahead and solder it to the number 1 contact there. And then we're going to go ahead and solder all the way to this 7th contact from here. There was a 7 here, so we're going to solder it to the 7 there. So all these have been soldered. And now we need to connect this main control board to the 2 left and right sidebars. So in order to do that, you will need to connect this to each one of these 2 boards. So you see there's a V+, a G, a D, an L, and a CLK. It also matches up with the V+, the G, the D, the L, and the CLK. This one is mirrored, so this is all flipped, but on this one it should be perfectly aligned. So you'll need to go ahead and solder the V+ to the V+ there, along with to the V+ here. So to do that, you will need another segment of cable. So what you will need to do is take your flat cable here, and you're going to need to break off 5 conductors, and you're going to need 2 segments of wire that are around 1.5 feet in length each. Alright, so once we have our 1.5 feet long 5 conductor cables, we're going to go ahead and strip off about 1/4 inch of insulation on one side and about 1/8 of an inch on the other. So we're going to go ahead and, this is the 1/4 inch strip side. Actually, this is more like a 1/3, but whatever. So we're going to go ahead and twist these wires together. So you want them connected like this. So that basically we combine these two wires at one junction so that all these contacts are combined. So we have this wire here, we're going to combine it like so. Alright, so now that we have all these wires connected together, as in we have all these connected, so the left corresponds with the left and the right corresponds with the right, so all these wires are like connected directly down like that. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to tin these wires. So now that these wires have been tinned, we're going to go ahead and trim them down a little bit. Trim them so they're kind of like that. So trim the wires so they're about this long. Then grab the earpiece with the chip on it, and then we're going to go ahead and solder these wires directly to here. So we're going to solder the wires here at the V plus G, the D, L, and the CLK. So just one by one, go ahead and solder these wires. So now that these wires are soldered, we're going to take the other end here and we're going to go ahead and strip and separate these wires and tin them. So do that for both sides of this wire. So now that these wires are both stripped and tinned, we're going to go ahead and connect each wire, this wire to this board and the other wire to the other board. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the left board. So looking at this board here, we see the V plus is the leftmost wire, and then we have G, D, L, and CLK. So this needs to be connected in the same order to this board. So if you look at this board, there's a V plus, there's a D, if you look at this board, there's a V plus, there's a G, the D, and the L, and the K, and the CLK. So we need to connect these two boards together. So you want the V plus aligned with V plus, and then all the way through clock to clock here. So go ahead and solder the left piece. So now that this board has been connected, this is the left sidebar, we're going to go ahead and connect the right board. If you look carefully at the right board, the contacts, the CLK is on the left and the V plus is on the right, which is kind of mirrored of what this board is. So just take that into account when you're soldering these connections. So again, just trace the wires back to the board here. So I have V plus on the left and CLK on the right. So I'll have to connect my cables like this. Okay, so now the right sidebar is also connected. So we're pretty much done soldering all the connections between all the boards. In order to get power to the whole system, there are these two pads here. I don't know if I can zoom in on that. So to get power to the system, you have the positive terminal and the negative terminal. It's marked V and G. So you'll have to connect this to the to one of the matrix drivers on the Thomas board. I'll show you where you need to connect this right now. So on your Thomas boards, you have a V plus connection and a V minus connection. So V plus is positive, V minus is negative. So you need to connect those to the pads here. So VI is positive and G is negative. So you'd want to make the connections actually not like this, but the other way. So essentially kind of like this, if that makes any sense. So again, let me just repeat that. You need to connect the V minus to the GND and the V plus to the VI here. And once you make those connections, you should be able to get power from your whole matrix, the whole matrix assembly to these sidebars. So I don't have a matrix ready right now, but I'll show you what it should look like once you made the connections and you turn the power on. Alright, so you plug everything in. This is what should happen. The earpieces should light up in a pattern, and so should the sidebars. So if your kit does this, then you have soldered everything properly. And now what's left to do is make the housings for the sidebars and put on the little color filters that go over these LEDs.